From the studios of Atlantic Television Network in Port Harcourt, this is the ATN International News for the 8th of August 2024. First, the headlines. In Somalia, suicide attack kills 37 people. In the United States, Blinken says Sinwar can ensure ceasefire. In Gaza, Israeli airstrikes kill 8 in Khan Yunis. In Russia, Putin condemns Ukrainian strikes on Kurds. And in New Zealand, exclusion of Maori words causes tension. These are And now, the details. At least 37 people have been killed and more than 200 injured in a suicide bombing and gun attack at the popular Lido Beach in the Somali capital of Mogadishu, the police have said. The attack happened on Friday night when residents of the city typically gather at the cafes near the seaside. Press reported that the police and witnesses said the bomber detonated his device late on Friday on the beach before gunmen stormed the area. State media says the government forces neutralized the attackers after a gunfight. The Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab group, a jihadist organization which the Somali government has been fighting since 2007, claimed responsibility for the attack in a statement published on an affiliated web news site. Videos posted on X showed bodies lying on the beach in the dark and people running to safety. 11 people are in intensive care units and a further 64 people remain in hospitals with wounds, while 137 people with light injuries had been discharged after receiving treatment, he said. A police spokesperson, Abdel Fattah Aden, told a press conference one attacker had blown himself up, 3 others had been killed and 1 was captured. Aden warned Mogadishu's residents to exercise caution in public and be wary of individuals behaving suspiciously. Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud convened an emergency section of the country's security agencies on Saturday to find out how the attack happened. The Lido Beach is in the Abdiaziz district and is in one of the most affluent and relatively secure areas in the city. It has, however, previously been targeted in attacks. Abdul Kadir Yusuf Abdullahi, the medical director of the Somalia Sudanese Specialized Hospital, said that 14 victims were taken to his hospital. The emergency department of the hospital was overwhelmed with the influx, requiring immediate triage to prioritize treatment, Abdullahi says. Somalia's disaster management agency made an urgent appeal for blood donors. As tensions between Israel and Iran escalate, Egypt has issued a safety notice warning all of its carriers to avoid Iranian airspace for a 3-hour window early Thursday. A NOTAM, or Notice to Air Missions, that was posted to pilots on Wednesday states that all Egyptian carriers should avoid Tehran's flight information region and that no flight plan will be accepted overflying such territory between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. GMT Thursday morning. In a statement, Egypt's Civil Aviation Ministry said that the warning came after Iran warned all airliners flying over the Iranian territories about military exercises on Wednesday and Thursday. OPS Group, an organization for the aviation industry, said in an alert posted on social media platform X Wednesday, said that such a NOTAM from Egypt is very unusual. It is possible that this is an indicator of an Iranian response to Israel and in turn a potential large set of airspace disruptions. At the same time, there may be another reason, OPS Group wrote, adding that it urged closed monitoring. Ian Petchenik, director of communications at Flight Trader 24, agreed that the NOTAM was unusual, but said that it's not surprising that Egypt would want to prevent any of its aircraft from danger, given the developments in the region seen over recent weeks. Still, he found that the notice to be interesting because, generally speaking, Egyptian carriers already avoid Iranian airspace, he said. What we are seeing now is normal traffic for the region afternoon, but if carriers like Emirates, which regularly flies through region's airspace, alter their paths, or we stop seeing aircraft in western Iran and Iraq ahead of any additional NOTAMs, then that's an indicator that airlines are taking this very serious, he said. Petchenik and others note that several airlines have already individually alerted or changed select flight pattern and paths in the Middle East over the last 2 weeks, with some temporarily suspending flights in and out of Israel and Lebanon as well. On Wednesday, press reported that Lufthansa Group extended its avoidance of Iranian and Iraq airspace up to and including August 13th. The German-based air travel giant said that it would also suspend flights to and from Tel Aviv, reported, citing its man who claimed an intellectual disability in the late attempt at a reprieve was executed on Wednesday evening for the killing of a woman who was jogging near her Houston home more than 27 years ago. Arthur Lee Burton, 54 years of age, received a lethal injection at the state penitentiary in Huntsville and was pronounced dead at 6:47 p.m. local time. He was condemned for the July 1997 killing and attempted rape of Nancy Adelman, a 48-year-old mother of 3. Burton appeared nervous as he lay strapped to the death chamber gurney, and a spiritual advisor prayed briefly over him, the inmate's right leg twitching under a white sheet that covered him from his chest to his feet. I want to say thank you to all the people who support me and pray for me, Burton said when asked by the warden if he had a final statement, his voice repeatedly crackling with a sharp breath after saying several words. To all the people I have hurt and caused pain, I wish, and my family, I'm not better than anyone. I hope that I find peace and you all can find too. He nodded to his brother Michael, watching through a window nearby, took 4 gasps as the little dose of the sedative pentobarbital above the official one. In his speech, Arce said that he would convene business leaders for discussions on whether to devalue the local currency. Forensic authorities in Dominican Republic worked Wednesday to identify the remains of at least 14 mostly decomposed bodies found on an abandoned vessel 10 nautical miles off its northern coast. The Dominican Republic Navy said that the 14 skeletons appeared to belong to individuals from Senegal and Mauritania, according to documentation found next to the bodies. Authorities are also working to determine the cause and time of the deaths and whether 12 packages of a substance found on the boat containing illicit drugs, presumably cocaine or heroin. Cell phones and geolocation devices were also found on the boat, the Navy said. The Atlantic route from West Africa to European Union territory is one of the most dangerous in the world. Boats that miss their destination can be swept away by Atlantic trade winds and currents from east to west, drifting for months. Migrants on board often die of dehydration and malnutrition. Others have also been known to jump into the ocean out of desperation. A press investigation published last year revealed that in 2021, at least 7 boats from Northwest Africa have been found in the Caribbean and Brazil, all carrying dead bodies. You're watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We will be back shortly after this break. Please stay tuned.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
People into the country illegally. That is amazing.
Honorable
you human trafficker.
Honorable
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond.
Welcome back to the broadcast of the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We are open for advert placements, bookings, and commercials, and you can connect with us and watch us on our ATN socials, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok, Atlantic TV Network 1. On X, formerly Twitter, Atlantic TV Net, or watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. And now to the rest of our stories. Hamas on Wednesday welcomed Turkey's decision to join South Africa's genocide lawsuit against Israel at the International Court of Justice. The Palestinian militant group said that the Turkish move affirms President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's support for the Palestinian cause. Turkey on Wednesday became the latest nation seeking to participate in the case. Spain, Mexico, Colombia, Nicaragua, and Libya have also asked to join the case. Erdogan, one of the fiercest critics of Israeli actions in Gaza, has accused Israel of genocide and has called for it to be punished in international courts, and has criticized Western nations for backing Israel. Hospital authorities said 2 Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 8 people in the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis. The first strike hit a house in a refugee camp in the city's west, killing 3 people, according to Nasser Hospital, where the bodies were taken. A second strike hit tents for displaced people in the Absa area east of Khan Yunis, killing 5. The overall Palestinian death toll from the Israeli-Hamas war has risen to at least 39,677, and Gaza's health ministry says that within another 91,645 wounded. The ministry doesn't distinguish between civilians and combatants in its count. The Israeli military issued new evacuation orders on Wednesday for an area in the northern Gaza that was heavily bombed at the start of the war some 10 months ago. The military said it would respond to a Hamas rocket attack from the Beit Hanun area the day before and urged residents to relocate to Gaza City, large areas of which have been destroyed. Beit Hanun, which is close to the border, was one of the first targets of the massive bombardment and ground invasion launched after Hamas' October 7th attack, which triggered the war. Israeli forces have repeatedly returned to areas where past air and ground operations caused widespread destruction as militants have regrouped. The vast majority of Gaza's 2.3 million people have been displaced within the narrow coastal strip since the start of the war, often multiple times. Hundreds of thousands are sheltering in crowded tent camps. Israel's military says it has killed a Hezbollah commander in an airstrike in southern Lebanon as tensions rise along the Israeli-Lebanon border. The army says that Hassan Fares Jeshi was killed in a drone strike in the town of Joyas and described him as a commander in the militant group's anti-tank missile unit. Hezbollah confirmed Jesse's death but gave no details about his position. There have been months of near-daily attacks along the border. Both sides are bracing for a potential significant escalation after the killings last week of a top Hezbollah commander in Beirut and the Hamas political leader in Iran. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah has vowed to retaliate against Israel for the strike in Beirut, no matter the consequences. Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant warned that Nasrallah might cause Lebanon to pay very dearly, very heavy prices, and warned that the process may deteriorate into war. That's not theoretical, it's real, he said. Protesters disrupted an Israeli Supreme Court hearing on Wednesday about a shadowy military facility where Israel has held Palestinian detainees throughout the war in Gaza. The protesters yelled shame as the attorney for a number of Israeli human rights groups argued that the Timan facility should be closed permanently over repeated allegations of detainee abuse. An investigation into the facility, as well as others by the rights group, found detainees endured abysmal conditions there. The Israeli military said that July 29th that it detained 9 soldiers for questioning following allegations of substantial abuse of a detainee at Sder Taiman, located in southern Israel. The arrest prompted an outcry from right-wing government officials, and several hundred protesters swarmed the military base where the detained soldiers were held, calling the arrest an affront to their service. On Tuesday night, Israel's television aired what it said was security camera footage from Sder Taiman, and that showed that several soldiers moving a detainee to the side of a large hall where other detainees are seen laying on the floor with their hands over their heads. In a footage from a different angle, the soldiers are shown in a huddle and lining up protective shields, apparently concealing the detainee from view. The report said that press said that the video was part of the investigation into alleged sexual assault. The military has generally denied ill treatment of Palestinian detainees, though a United Nations Human Rights Office issued a report accusing Israel of mistreating Palestinian prisoners. Following the accusation of harsh treatment that prompted this court case, Israel said that it was transforming the bulk of Palestinian detainees out of their time and upgrading it. According to testimony, according to the hearing, there are currently about 30 Palestinians being held as their teaman and on a daily basis. The human rights organizations that brought the case argued that the entire facility should be closed because it does not meet minimum humanitarian standards for detainees. It was not immediately clear when a ruling was expected. Israeli Supreme Court considered a petition on Wednesday to shutter a desert military prison where soldiers have been accused of abusing Palestinians, as a new video emerged purporting to show the sexual assault of Palestinian detainees. Bangladesh next leader Muhammad Yunus is heading home from an overseas trip to take office later on Thursday after imploring people to stay calm and be ready to rebuild the country after an uprising that ended the 16-year increasingly autocratic rule of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Before leaving Paris, where he had been attending the Olympics, Yunus appealed for calm in Bangladesh amid tensions over the country's future. Bangladesh's military chief will welcome Yunus when he lands at Dhakar's main international airport. On Thursday afternoon, Yunus was named as interim leader following talks among military officials, civic leaders, and the student activists who led the uprising against Hasina. Yunus made his first public comments in the French capital on Wednesday before boarding a plane to return home. He will be sworn in on Thursday night by President Mohamed Shahabuddin, authorities have said. Yunus congratulated the student protesters, saying that they had made our second victory day possible, and he appealed to them and other stakeholders to remain peaceful, while condemning the violence that followed Hasina's resignation on Monday. A man who is considered the heir apparent to the powerful Rajapaksa family in Sri Lanka will contest the presidential election in September, his political party said on Wednesday, in an apparent bid to regain his family's lost power after a humiliating setback 2 years ago during an unprecedented economic crisis in the Indian Ocean island nation. The Sri Lanka People's Front said that the 38-year-old lawyer Namal Rajapaksa, the eldest son of a former strongman president Mahinda Rajapaksa, will be its candidate in the September 21st election, the first since the nation plunged into the worst economic crisis. The election is seen as key to Sri Lanka's efforts to conclude a critical debt restructuring program and completing the financial reforms agreed to under a ballot program by the International Monetary Fund. The nominations for polling will be accepted on August the 15th. The Rajapaksa family has dominated Sri Lanka politics since the country gained independence from Britain in 1948, producing a dozen lawmakers from 3 generations spanning spanning 7 decades, and Mahinda Rajapaksa ruled as president from 2005 to 2015, appealing to the nationalist sentiments of the island's Buddhist Sinhalese majority. A court in Thailand on Wednesday ordered the dissolution of the Progressive Move Forward Party, which finished first in the last year's general election, saying it violated the constitution by proposing an amendment of a law against defaming the country's royal family. The Constitutional Court said that it voted unanimously to dissolve the party because its campaign proposal to amend the law amounted to an attempt to overthrow the nation's constitutional policy and monarchy. The Move Forward Party was unable to form a government after toppling the polls because members of the Senate, at the time a conservative military appointed the conservative military-appointed body refused to endorse its candidates for Prime Minister. The Election Commission had filed a petition against the party after the Constitutional Court ruled in January that it must stop advocating changes to the law known as Article 112, which protects the monarchy from criticism with penalties of up to 1 to 15 years in jail per offense. Move Forward has insisted that it wants to keep the monarchy above politics and not be exploited as a political tool. The court on Wednesday also imposed a 10-year ban on political activity for those who held the party's executive positions while it campaigned for the proposed amendment. Among those are its charismatic former leader, Peter Limiyaronath, and current chief Chitwalat Tulaton. China's exports rose 7% in July from a year earlier, below economists' forecast for a growth closer to 10% as trade tensions and weakening growth in the United States and other major markets weighed on demand. Chinese leaders have ramped up investments in manufacturing to rev up an economy that stalled during the pandemic and is still growing more slowly than hoped, but moves to tame the inflation by raising interest rates have beat into consumer demand in affluent Western countries. Imports climbed 7.2% to $215.9 billion, picking up momentum on stronger trade with other Asian countries, and now supply many industrial components, materials and consumer products to China. Exports to the United States rose 2.4% year-on-year, while shipments to Southeast Asia countries, now Beijing's biggest trading partner overall, jumped 11%. Exports totaled $300.6 billion in July, expanding at the slowest pace in 3 months and leaving a trade surplus for July of $84.7 billion. This was down from a record $99.1 billion, but the surplus rose nearly 8% in January-July from the same period of a year earlier. During the first 7 months of the year, China's exports were up a lackluster 2.8% as growth in consumer demand remained muted. Exports of IT products and computers rose sharply, as did imports of components needed to make them. Thus, we doubt if the positive surprise in import growth could send a strong signal of strong domestic demand rebound, economists at UBS said in a commentary. China's exports are forecast to weaken in coming months as sharp hikes in United States and European tariffs on electric vehicles take effect, as reports said that the freighters have been seen carrying big shipments of vehicles to European ports to try to beat those duties. Exports of vehicles rose 18% in the first 7 months of the year from the same period in 2023. A tanker ship caught fire Wednesday off the Indonesia Bali island and leaving 5 crew members dead and 15 others injured. The tanker said that the tanker Elizabeth, with 21 crew on board, caught fire at Gili Tempekon in Bali's Kangasen district while traveling to West Nusa Tenggara province, police said. A crew member said that when the tanker neared Gili Tempekon, an explosion occurred near the crew's living area. The chief officer found the helmsman lying on the deck with burns on his body. Karanagasen Police Chief Nenga Sadota said that the tanker stopped moving and then a second explosion occurred, he said. After checking, it was found that there was a fire in the engine room. The crew gathered at the muster station, but there were 5 people who did not join and were found dead, Sidiata said. The 3 crew members suffered serious burns and 12 others were being treated for minor burns, he said. The captain was reported to be safe and the cause of the fire is being investigated. United States Ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel, will skip this year's atomic bomb memorial service in Nagasaki because Israel was not invited, the embassy said on Wednesday. Emanuel will not attend the event because it was politicized by Nagasaki's decision to not to invite Israel, the embassy said. He will instead honor the victims of the atomic bomb dropped by the United States on Hiroshima on August the 9th, 1945 at a ceremony at a Buddhist temple in Tokyo. Some 70,000 people were killed and Japan surrendered soon afterwards on April the 15th, 1945, ending World War II and the country's nearly half-century of aggression in Asia. Nagasaki's mayor Shiro Suzuki indicated in July his reluctance to invite Israel and announced last week that it was not invited, noting concerns for possible unforeseen situations. Nagasaki hoped to conduct the ceremony in a peaceful and solemn environment and atmosphere, he said. In contrast, Hiroshima invited the Israeli ambassador to Egypt. The ambassador to Japan took Tuesday's ceremony among 50,000 attendants that also included Emmanuel and other envoys. Though Palestinian representatives were not invited, the United States dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima on August the 6th, 1945, killing 140,000 people and destroying the city. Yemeni's Houthis said that a United States-led coalition carried out 2 airstrikes late Tuesday in territories controlled by the Iran-backed rebels. The region is bracing for a potential counterattack by Iran and its allies following the killing of top militants in Beirut and Tehran in strikes attributed to Israel. The Houthi media family is like one big media. The Houthis military media office said that the strikes occurred in the Taiz province without providing further detail. There was no immediate comment from the United States military. The Houthis have launched several long-range missiles and drone attacks targeting Israel since the start of the war in Gaza and have attacked international shipping in the Red Sea, saying they are acting in solidarity with Palestinians. A U.S.-led coalition began launching airstrikes against the rebels in Yemen in January. Israel has intercepted nearly all of the projectiles fired from Yemen, but a rare direct hit on Tel Aviv in July killed 1 person and wounded 10. Israel responded with airstrikes on Yemen that the Houthi-run health ministry said killed 6 people and wounded more than 80. The Houthis paused their attacks for around 2 weeks before, but launched a missile at a container ship over the weekend. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday described a Ukrainian incursion into the country's southwestern Kursk region as a large-scale provocation, as his officials asserted that they were fighting off cross-border raids for a second day. Ukrainian officials remain silent about the scope of the operation. Putin met with his top defense and security officials to discuss what he called the indiscriminate shelling of civilian buildings, residential houses, ambulances with different types of weapons. He instructed the cabinet to coordinate assistance to the Kursk region. The fighting is about 500 kilometers from Moscow. Army Chief of Staff Valery Gerasimov told Putin at the meeting via video link that about 100 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed in the battle and more than 200 wounded, Russian news agencies reported. The Ukrainian shelling, meanwhile, killed at least 2 people, a paramedic and an ambulance driver, and injured 24. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said in a statement, "It was not possible to independently verify the Russian claims. Disinformation and propaganda have played a central role in the war, now in its 3rd year." John Kirby, the White House National Security spokesperson, declined to comment on the operations and said that Biden's administration has reached out to the Ukrainians to better understand what happened. A wave of disappointment swept over opposition activists in Belarus last week as the biggest East-West prisoner swap since Cold War unfolded, and when they learned that it included none of the hundreds of political detainees who have been locked up for years by its authoritarian leader. The dismay is especially poignant since Friday marks the 4th anniversary of the 2020 election, widely seen at home and abroad as fraudulent, that gave President Alexander Lukashenko his 6th term. That disputed balloting touched off the biggest protest and crackdown on dissent in Belarus in the past in its post-Soviet history. The Vyasna human rights group estimates that Belarus has about 1,400 political prisoners, including its founder and Nobel Peace Prize laureate Ales Bialensky. Like many top opposition figures, Bialensky is being held incommunicado. "I am happy to see the Russians release, but I'm shocked that no one remembered about the fate of Belarusian political prisoners," Bialensky's wife, Natalia Pinchuk, told the press. "I hope it was just the first round of the game involving the West, and Belarus will also be freed," following representatives of Russia. The only prisoner freed from Belarus in the August 1 swap was Rico Krieger, a German medical worker who was arrested there last year on terrorism charges. He was among 16 imprisoned Westerners and Russian dissidents traded for 8 Russians held abroad. Turkey on Wednesday filed a request with the UN court to join South Africa's lawsuit accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza, the foreign minister said. Turkey's ambassador to the Netherlands, accompanied by a group of Turkish legislators, submitted a declaration of intervention to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. With the development, Turkey, one of the fiercest critics of Israel's action in Gaza, becomes the latest nation seeking to participate in the cause. Spain, Mexico, Colombia, Nicaragua, and Libya has also asked to join the case, as have Palestinian officials. The court's decision on their request is still pending. We have just submitted our application to the International Court of Justice to intervene in the genocide case filed against Israel, Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan wrote on the social media platform X. Emboldened by the impunity for its crimes, Israel is killing more and more innocent Palestinians daily. The international community must do its part to stop the genocide. It must put the necessary pressure on Israel and its supporters, he said. Turkey will make every effort to do so. Israel has strongly rejected accusations of genocide and has argued that the war in Gaza is a legitimate defensive action against Hamas militants for their October 7th attack in southern Israel that killed 1,200 people and in which 250 hostages were taken. Far-right demonstrations that have been anticipated by the police in dozens of locations across Britain failed to materialize on Wednesday as peaceful anti-racism protesters instead showed up in force. Police had prepared for another night of violence at 100 locations following a week of rioting and disorder fueled by misinformation over a stabbing attack against young girls. Many businesses had boarded up windows and closed down in fear of what may lay ahead. Stand Up to Racism and other groups had planned counter-protests in response, but in most places they reclaimed their streets with nothing to oppose. In London, Bristol, Oxford, Liverpool and Birmingham, large peaceful crowds gathered outside agencies and law firms specializing in immigration that had been listed by internet chat groups as possible targets of far-right activity. It was a vast change from the chaos that has erupted on streets throughout England and Belfast, Northern Ireland, since July the 30th. Cities and towns have been racked by riots and looting for the past week as angry mobs, encouraged by far-right extremists, clashed with police and counter-demonstrators. The disturbances began after misinformation spread about the stabbing rampage that killed 3 girls in the seaside community of Southport, with social media users falsely identifying the suspect as an immigrant and a Muslim. The rioters, spouting anti-immigrant slogans, have attacked mosques and hotels housing asylum seekers, creating fear in Muslim and migrant communities. And in recent days, reports have emerged of violent counter-attacks in some areas. The head of London's Metropolitan Police Service said earlier on Wednesday that officers were focused on protecting immigration, lawyers and services. And in addition to thousands of officers already deployed, and about 1,300 specialist forces were on standby in case of serious trouble in London. French President Emmanuel Macron has made a phone call with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, during which he expressed his deep concern at the rising tensions in the region. Macron's office said in a statement that he called on Pezeshkian to do everything in his power to avoid a new military escalation, which would be in nobody's interest, including Iran's, and would do lasting damage to regional stability, the statement said. The French president also reiterated France's position in favor of an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and a firm refusal of any escalation with Lebanon. Macron called for the immediate release of French nationals held hostage in Iran, the statement said. Macron spoke to the Jordanian King Abdullah II, Emirati President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman earlier this week. Removal of basic Maori phrases meaning hello and New Zealand from a Maori Arts Minister was an attempt to rebuff criticism that his government is anti-Maori as it seeks to reverse policies favoring indigenous people and language. The Prime Minister appeared to indulge in a favorite pastime of New Zealanders who enjoy a friendly rivalry with their closest neighbor, calling Australians stupid. In my dealings with Australians, it always pays to incredibly be simple and clear with the use of English, Luxon said. Referring to the invitation sent to Tony Burke, reports between lawmakers across the Tasman have precedent. In the most famous example, a New Zealander leader, Rob Muldoon, quipped in the 1980s that New Zealanders who migrate to Australia raise the IQ of both countries. On Thursday, a smiling Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, responded to Luxon with a favorite Australian joke that no one can understand New Zealand accent. He said that at times interpreters were needed, perhaps diplomatically, adding that he had sometimes missed things said by Luxon's predecessors too. Look, we are great friends and we are great mates, the Australian leader said. Sometimes, though, we do speak a different language, and that's when we both think we are speaking English. The exchange offered a diversion in an otherwise tense section of New Zealand's parliament, which has been ruled by accusations of bullying, racism, and insults in recent weeks, with lawmakers in tears and the Prime Minister urging all political leaders to watch their rhetoric. And viewers, that's the size of the international news for today. But before we go, another look at the major stories. In Somalia, suicide attacks killed 37 people. In the United States, Blinken says that Sinwar can ensure ceasefire. In Gaza, Israeli airstrikes kill 8 in Khan Yunis. And in Russia, Putin condemns Ukrainian strikes on Kursk. In New Zealand, exclusion of Maori words cause tensions. I am Raymond Ken Mbata. Thank you for watching, and make sure to stay with and follow us on our social media platforms: X, formerly Twitter, Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, Instagram, Atlantic TV Network. Watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Stay tuned for business news coming up next.